enough from me. I'm very pleased to introduce my current boss, actually, the chair of the Republican Party here in Minnesota, Keith Downey, who's been nice enough to join us this morning. Keith.
I think we know who the boss is, don't we?
I do.
Two of us in the same boat. Hey, great to be with you. Wow, what a great turnout for Max. And boy, what a fun morning for me personally to be back here with so many people who supported me and part of the community here. And also really nice actually to have some new folks too, right? Sometimes you get to this point in the campaign, it's the same people, the same folks who've always been around, and yet we've got a bunch of new people here. And here we either maybe have a friend from our opponent side, our friend from the DFL back there who's tracking Max. Welcome.
Morning.
Listen carefully, you may actually find a way to change person. And so to Max, congratulations. I was up at an event in the 8th Congressional District with Stuart Mills, and they had 2 DFL trackers following him. So Max is getting close. He's only one away. Being like Stuart Mills. So congratulations, you made the weight tracking. So hey, thank you. This is awesome to be here. I just want to make a couple comments about maybe Max in the context of our chances in November and kind of where we're headed as a party. And I think Max is really a bright spot in that, and maybe even a beacon of things to come. And then also just a little bit about the election year, and then we'll turn it over to him because you want to hear from him most of all. But I didn't know Max when he first started running. And I heard this name, Max Rymer, and I'm like, wow, that's a perfect name for a candidate, isn't it? Max Rymer. It's just, you can do so much with the name. And I learned that he's millennial and he's connected to this generation, and he has a professional background in social media and web and mobile ads and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, that's just perfect. That's awesome for this district. And you see his literature, and his outfit even matches his shirt matches his literature. His writing is super consistent on the web. He's doing videos and all kinds of advertising, and you're like, wow, this guy is just like the absolute perfect candidate for the future of the Republican Party. And I was trying to remember the statistic, and I couldn't, about what percentage of voters are actually going to be millennials in like 10, 20 years, and it's obviously huge. And so I guess from a selfish perspective down at the state party, thinking about, okay, how do we win? How do we hold the suburbs? How do we maintain consistent majorities in Minnesota? It's people like Max jumping in a race like this and sticking it through and bringing a really positive message about what he believes, a positive message for young people and old people and all demographics and all slices of life. Really encouraged by him as a candidate. And once again, the majorities in the Minnesota legislature, well, at least in part, come through these inner-ring suburban districts. And it's really interesting if you look at the 2012 and 14 sequence, where we lost our majorities in 2012 for a variety of reasons, and then were able to claw back and get the majority in the Minnesota House in 2014, largely on the fact that the Democrats had massively overplayed their hand. The metro kind of liberal wing of the Democrat Party that really now holds sway really kind of took it to greater Minnesota, and those people, they're not stupid. They see this stuff, right? They follow the education funding formula, the transportation funding formula, and they follow the local government aid and the regulatory regimes and the tax strategies and how they were being asked to pay for property tax relief in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And they lost the majority largely on a greater Minnesota wave election year for us, and it's entirely possible that we could hold the House and the Senate, win the Senate back this year. Based on that, those state senators are going to still face those exact same votes, all the things that they voted for, the Senate office building, the buffers, all these things that people in greater Minnesota just realize that St. Paul's out of touch with their life and what's important to them. But long term, is that really healthy for the Republican Party? To simply be an outstate Greater Minnesota party. I don't think so. And so while the Democrats have very intentionally kind of been taking the metro and moving out into the suburbs, I think we need to have an intentional strategy of taking what we know is good for Minnesotans overall, and that has given us a chance at majorities through that Greater Minnesota strategy, but to push back in to the metro. When you think about how extreme the DFL agenda is, and that they really no longer are that old DFL, right? They're very quickly tossing farmers and even blue-collar trade labor, at least if you're a public sector employee, you're kind of in with the Democrats still. But they're really casting off the F and the L in their party. And that's not just an opportunity for us in Greater Minnesota. I think it's an opportunity for us to take a really positive message about what's good for all of Minnesota, metro, suburban, exurban, and Greater Minnesota, and for us to capitalize on that and position ourselves for sustainable majorities and statewide wins again. And so along comes Max, a prototypical candidate. Dario, certainly not to exclude you either, running a strong race in the A side, and Mike too, but you know, we need candidates who can take that complete message about these are really good policies, not just for farmers and not just for miners up on the Iron Range, but for young people graduating from school, people who are coming out of college and they're in this new economy and they don't just have a job, they're in 2 or 3 professions at once, and it's really different out there. We need people like Max who can carry that message and can really be fundamentally consistent conservative Republicans, but appeal to that broader base of people that we need to for the long haul. So for our strategy long term, Max Rymer is awesome for what we're trying to do. For 49B, I guarantee you, Max will be way better than Paul Rosenthal. I served with Paul Rosenthal. I know Paul Rosenthal. And Max Rymer is no Paul Rosenthal. So anyway, really an honor and privilege to watch this guy work. He and I have talked a little bit about, after the election, doing a bit of a debrief and making sure that the party and all of our other candidates learn from many of the things that he's pointing here. Really positive, good things that we all, I think, can benefit from in your campaign. And so with that, let me just turn it over to Max Rymer.
Rymer, and I'm running for District 49B. So if you don't know, it's the most gerrymandered piece of land you could ever imagine. Take a look at the map. It's shaped like kind of a boot if you broke your leg a little bit and then threw it against the wall. All right, so we have a piece of Edina, South Edina, West Bloomington, a little bit of Minnetonka, and a little bit of Eden Prairie. So what's really interesting is Barb Sutter, who came and spoke, she's my campaign manager for the season. And as you guys know, we're sitting in a time right now, politically, it's sign season, right? You're seeing a lot of signs out and about. And one of our strategies was we were going to take a lot of contacts that Barb made and previous campaigns made, and I was going to reach out to them personally, in a personal way, to ask if they would be willing to have a sign again this time around. And we wrote handwritten notes. You know, I wanted to make sure that people understood that I would really appreciate their piece of land, their time, and their effort to help put these signs up. And one thing that was very interesting is we got to one letter, and the address on it really surprised me. The name on it really surprised me. The name was Kay Mockenhoff. And when Elsie and I rented our condominium, we rented from Kay, right? And it was so funny because Kay passed away about 8 months ago. And when we got to this letter, still wrote it out. And it's one of those things where we didn't really understand or know where Kay was at politically, right? What we did know was as the lung cancer was taking her from us, Elsie and I would go and visit, go and clean up, pray with her, and just see what she needed. You know, she was this older woman. She lived on Long Break and in Edina, and we you go over there and see what she needed. So when we got to this letter, and the fact that she had one of Barb's signs, wow, you know, what an affirmation that we're supposed to be doing this. You know, I got to Kay's name, and that's powerful stuff, you know. And I want to tell you a little bit about Kay. Elsie and I went over there and took care of her quite often. And I want to tell you the things that she was worried about. This was her second time with lung cancer. She knew that things were kind of inevitable at this point. Her husband Bob had passed away about 6 months earlier, and she had no next of kin. She had no family to rely on, you know. So Elsie and I were the stopgap a lot of times to just listen to her. Kay was worried about what would happen to her property. Kay still had a mortgage on the property. She owned the condo that Elsie and I rented from. It's currently in probate. She worried about the tax burdens, right, with her estate. She worried about what was going to happen to her and what was going to happen next for those people that she did consider close, right? And the biggest piece of it is when she was talking to me, what I was hearing from her, I'm in web development, so you're constantly listening. You're constantly listening for problems, for things that you can solve, for things that you can help with. And a lot of what I heard was Kay was worried about things that the government in the state has inflicted on her, right? So when we talk about the gift and estate tax in the state, the fact that she had to worry about another 14% of whatever she had would be gone after she passed away. She didn't know where those assets would go. She didn't know where that money would go. But what she did know was that those people around her and those people who were part of her probate process would eventually suffer the consequences of things that she has built up her entire life. That is a small piece of a bigger problem in the state, right? The government is constantly overreaching, overstepping its bounds, getting involved in things that it never should have gotten involved with, right? So we have seniors leaving the state, we have good paying jobs leaving the state, we have our manufacturing leaving the state, and we continue to have these budgetary surpluses, right? So meanwhile, we create a climate for people to leave the state where people cannot afford to pay their property taxes, where people cannot afford to run their manufacturing business, where people who have been in this district and in this state for over 50 years are leaving, are fed up, and it's not just because of the weather. All the while, in the past 2 years, we've had $2.5 billion worth of budgetary surplus, right? That's immoral, right? That's not political, that's immoral, right? So that's one of the biggest reasons I'm throwing my hat in the ring. My business partner Sam is here. We kind of talked a little bit about some other things that are happening in the state, specifically dealing with healthcare. You know, so with digital solutions, we looked at health insurance policies for our employees. And we do pretty well for ourselves as a company, but the cost was outrageous, right? And they told us that you can expect per head about a 30% premium increase next year. 30%, right? And that's not even the worst of it, because we went through a broker in Burnsville, and she said, well, just be thankful. At the time, Blue Cross was still trying to fit into Minsure, right? And they go, well, be thankful you're not with Blue Cross, because the average Blue Cross is going up 65 to 70% of premiums. 65 to 70%. What is going on right now? What are we doing, right? I find it very disturbing that government decides to get involved in an industry, and then all of a sudden we're all just very confused as to why costs are going up and why benefits are going down. And it's part of a greater trend, right? So I'm running for a mentality change. I think the people in this district are tired of their property taxes increasing. I think they're tired of being demonized for retiring. I think they're tired of their Social Security getting taxed. And for young millennials like myself, I think we're tired of our job prospects being poor, So when we talk about health insurance, these are benefits that my parents had, that my grandparents had, part of the American dream. And we're moving to a place, and I think it's nefarious, I think it's intentional, that the government is telling us that the American dream doesn't exist anymore as we know it. But I think the government caused that problem. So in St. Paul, when I get there, when I'm elected in November, we're gonna have a little bit of a mentality shift. You know, I'm willing to play ball to a certain extent and play nice to a certain extent, but things need to change. There needs to be a mentality shift at the state level, at the federal level. We need to understand that it's not okay that our state is $58 billion in debt, that our country is $20 trillion in debt, and we seem to think that this is just a magical happening, you know. So, all that to be said, I'm for a more responsible government. And my part that I'm going to play at the Capitol is going to be to push for initiatives that rein in government spending, that focus on the actual projects that make us money as a state versus these fun little pet projects. Honestly, like the Southwest Light Rail is a big one that I will get in and put the kibosh on because the return on the investment is not there, right? And then the other thing is when we talk about education in the state, we just had a survey came out that came out in St. Paul. We're still graduating high schoolers with, that have a third grade reading level. And we're told that the solution is to pump more money into the system. And as soon as we reach a certain level of money that we pumped into the system, we promise everything will be all right. But we're living in a changing world. We're living in a changing economy. Sam and I, when we build websites, when we build applications, you see it all the time. Things are becoming more innovative, more intuitive, leaner, and we are not evolving with that economy right now. Because what we're saying is that an education system that has been in place for the past 60 years or more works in an economy that is passing it by. So we need educational diversity. We need to create an educational marketplace in this state that allows parents and students to make the best decision for them. And we also need to focus on technology in education. All these kids have iPhones, all these kids have iPads, you know, and we tend to think that we're a progressive state or a progressive institution when we hand them a device and say this will help your life. But none of these kids can tell you why Angry Birds pops up on their phone. You know, they can't tell you the inner workings of what's actually happening with that device. So an initiative that we're also going to be focusing on within education finance specifically is making sure that we put money into things that matter in education today. The average app developer in the Twin Cities right now, and you can have just a high school degree as long as you have the skill set, makes $70,000 a year. $70,000 a year to build apps for a living. You don't need a college degree for that. And that's not to demonize college and say that college is not necessary, but these are the opportunities that we're missing in our education system because we're still focusing on things that worked 100 years ago. And the only reason that they haven't changed is because of special interest in St. Paul, special interest in Washington. So I'm going to help break through that noise. I'm going to fight for the people in this district. These things are serious. You know, I think I'm a funny guy, but these are real issues. These are real immoral issues. So I carry this letter from Kay around with me, you know, everywhere I go on the campaign trail now. I think about her. Because when we talk about these political issues, we tend to make them abstract. We tend to make them pie in the sky, what can be done, throw our hands up in the air. We're already entrenched in this system. But I think about Kate. Her life was directly impacted. She was worried about where her money was going, what was going to happen to it, and a lot of that was initiated, again, by government initiatives. So all that to be said, there are people who are struggling in this district. There are people who want to grow in this district. 34% of this district is 25 to 34 years old. They moved here from Minneapolis. They moved here from St. Paul. Chris, you talked about Burnsville, moving from St. Paul. But all that to be said, people want to grow. People want to thrive in this economy, and we need a government that understands that. We also need a government that when you finally do grow, and when you finally earned a very good living for yourself, and you've built a family, and you've built a nest egg, and you've built a life for yourself, that we don't demonize those people, that we don't say we don't need these people. Because when we talk about high property taxes, when we talk about the gift and the estate tax, we talk about the fact that we're one of very few states that still taxes Social Security. That's demonizing people. It's saying you don't belong here. So what I need you guys to know, from now until November, we have 68 days. We're going to be knocking on doors. We're going to be continuing our social media efforts, even if they attract what I was told was a nonprofit researcher, right? But hopefully we can attract some more nonprofit researchers. And we're going to fight very hard to win this race. This district was Republican for 50 years. There is no reason, as I knock on doors, Sam and I have knocked on about 5,000 doors already, all right? People are fiscally conservative in their heart, even if they don't think they're Republican. My generation specifically, the Bernie generation, we are still the generation that has opened the least amount of credit cards since credit cards have been a thing. We are slow to buy a home, and that's not because we're afraid necessarily, but it's because we're inherently conservative people. People understand that you cannot spend beyond your means. People understand that when you take in a certain amount of money, that you are to be a good steward of that money. People understand that. And that's the message that we're connecting with at the door, regardless of your party. So we have a groundswell of great support. We have a groundswell of momentum right now. We have, we did not start off, Keith didn't know my name when I started. We did not start off as a targeted race. I'll tell you that right now. But folks, we're going to surprise some people. We're going to surprise some people in a big way come November. It's because we have a more compelling message. It's because we have better ideas. It's because we have a fresh perspective on the way that this economy and our government should work. And we are the party, and we are the movement of the future, right? So we're in 49B right now. We're going to win, Chris. If you want to let Paul know, we'll take his early resignation. Right? So again, my name is Max Rymer. I so appreciate you all coming out today. I so appreciate your support. I appreciate your support financially. I feel strongly that if I'm to tell my constituents that they can do it without the government, that I have to run a campaign that does it without the government as well. So I'm one of the very few campaigns in the state that has refused the state subsidy out of principle. It's a $6,000 check, all right? So what I need you guys to know is any money that you can give me, I need your help, all right? We're not going to do this thing. With the government's assistance, I'm convinced there's no such thing as free money, all right? So when Barb and I talked about it, I refused to take that check. I need you guys to know that I'm going to fight for you from now until November and beyond. Thank you guys so much for coming out to breakfast this morning. Let's vote Max in November, and let's win. Thanks.